On a quiet September morning, a grainy video shot by a freight forwarder in Greece began circulating on social media. The images were astonishing: towering stacks of shipping containers at the port of Piraeus, piled so high they looked like a fortress of steel. The man behind the camera warned viewers that what they were seeing was no ordinary backlog. These were not just goods waiting to be processed, they were the visible trace of a sprawling fraud network that had been quietly bleeding Europe for years. Within days, the clip went viral across Europe. Then came the revelation that would transform it from rumor into a scandal of historic proportions. On September 15, 2025, the European Public Prosecutor's Office, EPPO, announced that an unprecedented operation had uncovered over 2,400 shipping containers linked to massive customs fraud, the largest case of its kind in the history of the European Union. The operation, named Calypso, was no ordinary customs inspection. It was the result of a multinational investigation spanning 14 countries, coordinated raids across multiple jurisdictions, and the freezing of assets worth hundreds of millions of euros. What lay beneath was not simply a matter of bureaucratic negligence, but an organized criminal network stretching across continents, with its roots firmly embedded in China. The port that became a gateway for fraud. The port of Piraeus, just outside Athens, is more than a Greek facility. It is Europe's busiest container port and a strategic entry point for goods arriving from Asia. Each day, around 4,500 containers arrive here from China, making it one of the most important gateways for Sino-European trade. But this critical artery of commerce had quietly become corrupted. According to EPPO, highly organized Chinese criminal networks had infiltrated the supply chain at every level, from Chinese exporters to European customs brokers, from freight companies to complicit port officials. What appeared to be routine shipping traffic concealed a sophisticated scheme of tax evasion, false declarations, and money laundering. It was, in short, the perfect crime until Operation Calypso struck. The turning point came on June 26, 2025, when EPPO launched coordinated raids under the codename Calypso. The scope was unprecedented. 101 raids conducted across Bulgaria, Greece, France, and Spain. Customs offices, warehouses, freight companies, accounting firms, and even lawyers' offices were searched. Authorities seized 5.88 million euros in cash, including large sums in Hong Kong dollars, cryptocurrencies, and digital wallets. Over 7,000 electric bicycles and nearly 4,000 electric scooters were confiscated. 500 containers were seized immediately, later growing to 2,435 containers as the investigation widened. Greek customs officials described the operation as unprecedented in scale, involving more than 200 staff and 72 hours just to complete the initial inventory. Local media were stunned at the sheer magnitude of fraud that had been unfolding in plain sight. Among the most striking revelations, many of the containers were packed with Chinese-made electric bicycles, textiles, clothing, and shoes. Goods were deliberately undervalued in customs declarations, often listed at only 10 to 15% of their actual quantity or worth. For electric bicycles alone, the fraud cost the EU 25 million in unpaid duties and 12.5 million in VAT. When extrapolated across years of operations, investigators estimated the EU had been cheated out of at least 800 million. This was not a small-time smuggling racket. It was an industrial-scale scheming underground economy designed and operated by Chinese actors. How the fraud worked. Initial findings revealed a three-step playbook perfected by the Chinese networks. Falsifying shipments, goods worth 500 euros were declared as 100. Electric bicycles were passed off as parts, genuine leather boots were labeled plastic sandals. By manipulating invoices and shipping lists, smugglers slashed customs duties by up to 80%. Exploiting EU loopholes, shell companies in Bulgaria or Greece were registered under false pretenses, using EU customs rules to declare goods as if they were in transit to Germany or Denmark. In reality, the products never left Greece, they sat in local warehouses, ready to be distributed across Europe while VAT obligations magically vanished. Black market sales. Once inside the EU, the goods flooded black markets in France, Italy, and Spain, sold exclusively in cash to bypass the banking system. Profits were laundered through underground Chinese banks, cryptocurrencies, and shadowy financial channels, before being funneled back to China. The sheer audacity of the scheme revealed not only criminal intent but also a systematic abuse of Europe's trust in global trade rules. As investigators dug deeper, they identified a central figure, a Chinese woman known only as Kelly, believed to be the ringleader of the network operating out of Piraeus. Official documents confirm she had worked as a translator, leveraging her language skills to bridge communications between Chinese exporters, Greek port officials, and European freight operators. Her background included involvement in tobacco smuggling, a sign of her long-standing ties to transnational crime. For over a decade, Kelly's group used 17 shell companies to carry out more than 21,000 fake transactions. The method was compared by investigators to an ant moving its load, slow, steady, but relentless. Piece by piece, container by container, billions of euros in Chinese goods were smuggled into Europe while avoiding taxes. The exposure of Kelly's operation not only embarrassed Greek authorities but also raised troubling questions. How could such a vast network operate for more than 10 years in Europe's busiest port without being stopped? The answer, critics argue, lies in corruption and China's deep economic influence over the port itself. The scandal cannot be understood without acknowledging the role of COSCO Shipping, China's state-owned shipping giant. COSCO holds a 67% stake in the Piraeus Port Authority, making it the de facto controller of Europe's most strategic maritime hub. It first entered Greece in 2009, took over key terminals in 2016, and has since tightened its grip under the banner of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. For years, Western analysts warned that Chinese control of European ports could create vulnerabilities. Operation Calypso provided chilling evidence. The port of Piraeus, a crown jewel of China's European investments, had become a breeding ground for Chinese smuggling networks. While COSCO itself has not been directly charged, European prosecutors and security experts argue that China's dominance in Piraeus created the conditions for large-scale fraud. Weak oversight, conflicts of interest, and the presence of Chinese-linked companies allowed criminal activity to flourish. Jens Bastian of the German think tank SWP put it bluntly. If COSCO does not cooperate fully with investigators and provide transparency, its operating license should be reconsidered. This is more than a tax scandal. It is a warning about what happens when Europe cedes control of critical infrastructure to China. The numbers alone are staggering: 800 million lost to fraud, thousands of containers slipping through, more than a decade of unchecked crime. But the real impact is broader. European taxpayers lose funds that could have gone to public services, instead disappeared into Chinese-controlled networks. Legitimate businesses suffer. European manufacturers of bicycles, textiles, and shoes face unfair competition from Chinese goods that evade taxes and flood markets at artificially low prices. Rule of law undermined. Corruption among customs officers, bribed port workers, and fraudulent brokers show how easily China's networks corrupted European institutions. The scandal lays bare a harsh truth: China's economic reach is not benign. Commerce is a tool of exploitation, turning Europe's own ports against itself. The tragedy of Operation Calypso cannot be separated from the suffering of ordinary Chinese citizens. While the network of smugglers raked in billions by manipulating customs declarations and flooding Europe with undervalued goods, the actual workers behind those shipments lived lives of hardship. In factories across Guangdong and Zhejiang, laborers assembled electric bicycles and scooters for meager wages, often under unsafe conditions. Reports from labor NGOs describe 12-hour shifts in stifling workshops, where protective gear was scarce and workers inhaled toxic fumes from battery production. The smugglers grew rich, but the people who built the product saw none of the wealth. These workers were trapped in a cycle of exploitation. They knew their goods were being exported under fraudulent invoices, but they had no power to resist. In many cases, they were not even paid on time. Interviews conducted by Chinese labor rights groups revealed that employees in small-scale factory subcontractors feeding the smuggling network were sometimes owed months of back pay. When they tried to demand their wages, local police sided with the factory owners. Complaints were dismissed as disruptive activity, and workers who staged protests were swiftly arrested. This is the bitter irony: the smuggling that robbed Europe of €800 million also robbed Chinese workers of dignity, health, and livelihood. Far from being beneficiaries of illicit trade, they were its invisible victims. Inside China, the government's response was not to dismantle these networks but to silence anyone who dared expose them. When Chinese journalists attempted to investigate suspicious logistics companies in Ningbo and Shenzhen, their reports were censored. Independent bloggers who posted about unusual shipping patterns at Piraeus saw their accounts shut down. The state narrative insisted that China was an engine of global prosperity, and any suggestion of corruption or organized crime was branded foreign smearing. The repression extended even to ordinary citizens. Migrant families who lost relatives in factory accidents connected to the smuggling trade found themselves harassed by police. Mothers who tried to stage vigils outside local government offices were dragged away by security forces. Far from protecting its people, Beijing treated them as threats to be contained. Meanwhile, the spectacle of Chinese state-owned enterprises expanding abroad continued unabated. Costco proudly displayed its investments in glossy brochures, calling Piraeus the jewel of the Belt and Road. Official propaganda portrayed the port as a symbol of China's benevolence toward Europe. Yet beneath the polished facade lay a reality of corruption, fraud, and repression. Critics rightly asked, if China could not protect its own citizens from exploitation at home, why should Europe trust it to manage critical infrastructure abroad? The scandal also revealed how Chinese control over Piraeus gave Beijing not just economic leverage but also political cover. Local Greek unions had long complained about working conditions at Costco-managed terminals, long hours, unsafe equipment, and the suppression of independent labor organizing. When a dockworker died in a workplace accident in 2021, employees staged a strike demanding better safety. Costco's response was to call in police, and Greek authorities under pressure to maintain good relations with Beijing treated the strikers as troublemakers rather than victims. This pattern mirrored what was happening inside China itself: exploitation paired with repression. Workers were expected to labor in silence, while profits flowed upward to elites and outwards to smuggling networks. Europe was not simply dealing with a customs fraud problem, it was confronting the export of an authoritarian model of governance. Critics of Beijing argued that the scandal demonstrated China's two-faced approach. Outwardly, officials in Beijing claimed to support fair trade and mutual prosperity. In reality, the Chinese state turned a blind eye to the criminal networks that operated out of its ports and factories, because those networks kept production lines running and foreign currency flowing back into the country. For the Communist Party, the priority was not legality or fairness but maintaining control. Ordinary Chinese citizens bore the cost. Farmers whose land was expropriated to build logistics hubs for export routes received pitiful compensation. In Zhejiang, villagers reported being forced off their fields so warehouses could be constructed for strategic trade. Those who resisted found themselves visited by police at night. The message was clear: in Xi Jinping's China, the interests of the state and its favored corporations outweighed the rights of individuals. The result was a paradox. China's rulers presented themselves as champions of the poor, but their policies fueled poverty at home while creating chaos abroad. Operation Calypso laid bare this contradiction. The same regime that boasted of lifting millions out of poverty was simultaneously enabling networks that exploited its workers, cheated its trading partners, and destabilized the global economy. European officials who examined the case spoke with unusual bluntness. One investigator told Le Monde, this was not just about fraud. It was about a system that thrives on fraud. And that system is linked to Beijing's strategy. His words underscored the uncomfortable truth: the smuggling at Piraeus was not an accident, but the logical outcome of a political and economic model that tolerates corruption so long as it serves the state's larger goals. Even after the raids, there was little sign of genuine reform from China. Beijing did not announce a crackdown on the exporters involved. No Chinese customs officers were disciplined. Instead, the propaganda machine went into overdrive, accusing Western media of weaponizing isolated incidents. The narrative was predictable: deny responsibility, deflect blame, and double down on control. Meanwhile, in Chinese cities, the people most affected by the scandal, the workers, the small entrepreneurs, the migrants, remained voiceless. Many had hoped that international exposure of the fraud would improve their situation, but instead, they faced tighter surveillance. One labor activist from Guangzhou described it succinctly: they fear the truth more than the crime itself. For Europe, the lesson was sobering. The scandal showed that dealing with China meant dealing with a system where exploitation and repression are inseparable. The port of Piraeus, once hailed as a model of cooperation, had become a warning: hand over critical assets to Beijing, and you invite not prosperity but subversion. Operation Calypso was Europe's wake-up call. The viral video that first showed the mountain of containers was not just an image of fraud, it was an image of China's shadow stretching across the continent. It was a reminder that the costs of doing business with Beijing are not only measured in euros lost, but in values betrayed, institutions corrupted, and people silenced.
Over 100 students poisoned in Guizhou. Families plead for help. A mass food poisoning incident recently struck Guizhou province, leaving more than 100 students ill and several suffering serious liver and kidney damage. With officials attempting to suppress information, distraught relatives could only cry out in desperation, begging for divine intervention to save their children. According to videos circulating online, the outbreak occurred in Xishui County, Zunyi City, after students consumed sandwiches from a local branch of the Mejiale bakery chain. Many were rushed to hospitals where scenes showed children lying in beds receiving emergency intravenous treatment. Parents reported that after several days in hospital, some children's conditions deteriorated, developing kidney stones, hydronephrosis, vomiting blood, and signs of liver and kidney failure. Despite appeals to local authorities, families said they received no timely response and were forced to post videos online seeking public help. Some of those videos were later deleted. In one clip, a parent pleaded, "Oh Lord, these children ate sandwiches and have been in hospital for 3 days. Their liver and kidney functions are already badly damaged. Who will save our children?" Another cried out, "Please help us. We don't know what else to do." More than 100 people in Xishui were poisoned by these sandwiches, and no one is taking responsibility. Only after days of exposure online did state media outlet Xinhua acknowledge the case on September 21, referring to it merely as a suspected food poisoning incident. The report confirmed that multiple individuals, including children, had been hospitalized after eating sandwiches produced by the Xishui Maike Mejayali food factory. Officials disclosed that the factory operates 8 shops in Xishui. Of the contaminated batch of sandwiches, 208 portions were sold, with 29 recalled and 179 consumed. Most patients are being treated at the Xishui County People's Hospital, while some have been transferred to larger hospitals in Zunyi and Chongqing. Online witnesses described the situation grimly. One child was poisoned so badly that dialysis has already begun. Another wrote, "These toxins directly damage the liver and kidneys, Yesterday in the city hospital, I saw children passing blood, absolutely heartbreaking. Anger has also mounted at the government's information blackout. Why can't such news even leave the province? You know why, one netizen remarked. Another said, how can such a serious incident go unannounced? Others urged families to preserve evidence before it disappears. They're moving the remaining products already. Parents, hurry to the factory. Record everything, seal the materials, keep proof. Once they clear it out, nothing will be left. China's worst fear has come true, a nation trapped in deflation. The nightmare that many Chinese citizens feared has finally arrived. Not rising prices, but 3 consecutive years of decline. A deflationary spiral has swallowed 1.4 billion people, dragging the world's second-largest economy into uncharted waters. Imagine the contrast. While every major economy struggles to tame inflation, China alone is being strangled by deflation. In August 2025, the National Bureau of Statistics reported that the Consumer Price Index, CPI, fell by 0.4% year-on-year, dipping below zero for the 3rd time in as many months. The Producer Price Index, PPI, dropped even further, down 2.9%, marking the 35th consecutive month of contraction. In plain terms, factory gate prices have not seen positive growth for 3 years. An unprecedented streak since the beginning of reform and opening. Bloomberg put it bluntly, China is mired in an unprecedented 9 quarters of falling prices, exposing deep structural imbalances between supply and demand. The severity of this deflation now exceeds the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis. Durable goods, refrigerators, washing machines, automobiles have recorded the sharpest drops, with prices falling 3.5% in July and widening to 3.7% in August. Manufacturers slash prices in desperation, yet consumers remain unwilling or unable to buy. By contrast, the United States wrestled with inflation as high as 9% in 2024, but policy tightening eventually pulled it down near 2%. China, on the other hand, has fallen into negative territory. Behind these numbers lies a chilling social reality. Food prices fell 4.3% in August, compared with a 1.6% decline the month before. Pork, eggs, and vegetables all became cheaper, not because of abundance, but because of collapsing demand. Core CPI, excluding food and energy, rose just 0.9%. A figure far too weak to conceal the depth of deflation. As one Taiwanese economist observed, China has entered a negative spiral with no short-term exit. Some estimate it may take 5 to 10 years to recover, if recovery is even possible. Why is this happening? The roots are clear. Employment has collapsed across the service sector, youth joblessness has surged, and consumer confidence has evaporated. At the same time, zombie enterprises have been artificially propped up to preserve jobs, flooding the market with excess capacity and unsold inventories. Capacity utilization in manufacturing hovers near 75%. 1 in 4 factories effectively runs idle, yet they continue to receive bailout loans that quickly turn into bad debt, amplifying systemic risks. Housing has become the largest trigger. In 2024, national housing sales dropped below 1 billion square meters for the first time in a decade. By 2025, giants like Country Garden, saddled with debts of 1.43 trillion won, were on the brink of collapse, while Vanke posted massive losses. Court-ordered property auctions surged, second-hand listings soared, and in cities like Shenzhen, homeowners even began defaulting en masse. With household wealth eroded, the wealth effect that once sustained consumption has collapsed, dragging CPI lower still. Perhaps most alarming is Beijing's response. According to the Wall Street Journal, senior leaders even remarked, "What's so bad about deflation? Don't people like cheaper goods?" Such words betray a dangerous misunderstanding. Deflation is not about affordability, but about despair. When no one dares to spend, businesses cannot earn profits, jobs vanish, wages shrink, and the cycle feeds itself into a death spiral. Global comparisons deepen the irony. In August 2025, U.S. CPI rose 2.3%. The Eurozone's 1.8%, and Japan, after 30 years of stagnation, finally stabilized at 2%. Only China continues to sink, the sole major economy where prices fall too fast instead of rising. This is not merely an economic phenomenon, but a human tragedy. Families watch their homes lose 30% of value, face mounting medical bills, shrinking incomes, and rising debts. By mid-2025, household debt had climbed to 65% of GDP, while disposable income growth slowed to just 2.4%. Goods may be cheaper, but wallets are emptier. A paradox of survival under deflation. Enterprises fare no better. Manufacturing profits have collapsed below 3%, steel prices have plunged 40% since 2022, and overcapacity piles up at ports. Even the much-touted new energy car sector is drowning in debt. 33 listed automakers now owe nearly 1 trillion yuan combined. Exporters are squeezed by weak Western demand and cutthroat Southeast Asian competition, forcing endless price cuts and further eroding margins. Deflation here is not discounting, but self-inflicted wounds. Financial stability is the next domino. Local government debts have surged past 40 trillion yuan, much of it tied to land sales and shadow banking. With land revenues collapsing 22% in early 2025, fiscal gaps are widening. Non-performing loan ratios hover near 5%, far above official figures. Trust products and wealth management schemes are collapsing, wiping out family savings. What begins as falling prices may end as a banking crisis. Observers inevitably compare China's plight to Japan's lost 30 years, but the resemblance is darker. Japan had foreign capital inflows and institutional stability. China faces capital flight, technological bottlenecks, and governance priorities skewed toward political control over livelihoods. In 2024 alone, foreign investors pulled out $160 billion, 0 cents, while youth unemployment may already exceed 25% in reality. Deflation in China is not just an economic condition, it is a slow-motion implosion of confidence, wealth, and opportunity. The danger is not a lost decade, but the possibility of a lost generation. Once a thriving economic hub, Guangha is now a city on the brink. Military vehicles roll through its central streets, blocking bridges while riot police with shields patrol intersections. Ordinary citizens, not foreign agitators, as the government claims, are taking to the streets in anger at worsening economic oppression. An office worker earning barely 5,000 yuan a month describes the city as a ticking time bomb. Factories have shuttered, supermarkets sit half-empty, and once-bustling pedestrian streets like Shangzhou are littered with for-lease signs. Unofficial estimates suggest that nearly 500 businesses close every day in Guangha, plunging thousands into unemployment. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has deployed troops from the local military district to contain unrest, but this is only a temporary bandage on the growing fire of public discontent. Across China, the story is the same. Economic collapse, mass bankruptcies, and soaring unemployment define daily life. In Suzhou, millions of workers lost jobs overnight. Dongguan has seen factory after factory fall into bankruptcy. Even Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangha are drowning in closures. Official unemployment figures claim 5.2%, but the real rate is likely double, especially among the youth. In 2025, a record 12.22 million graduates entered the toughest job market in history. Even fallback jobs in food delivery and ride-hailing are saturated. Almost 30% of drivers now hold college degrees. At a job fair at Heilongjiang University, 100,000 students queued for hours, yet 80% of firms came only to show face, without hiring. Salaries are dismal. One state-owned company offered just 3,500 yuan a month for a secretarial role requiring a master's degree. Many new hires are laid off within months during so-called workforce optimization. By 2026, the graduate glut could reach 13 million, pushing the job market to breaking point. The CCP manipulates data, but lived reality cannot be hidden. Youth disillusionment is spreading. Many embrace lying flat or extreme frugality, what some call revenge saving. One young man in Beijing survives on a daily diet of tofu and pork for 7.5 yuan, about $1.00, refusing to spend 100 yuan on a single meal that could cover half a month's groceries. Online, the savings challenge trend encourages people to live on less than 300 yuan a month, with some surviving on watermelon rinds. Families making 15,000 yuan a month raise 3 children while keeping expenses under 1,000 yuan, adhering to the 5 no's. No takeout, no restaurants, no new clothes, no travel, and no luxuries. Meanwhile, officials live lavishly in chauffeur-driven cars, hosting banquets and sending children abroad. The contrast has fueled bitterness. A joke circulates. No college degree, don't even dream of becoming a food delivery driver. Discontent is not limited to the young. Military veterans, once the CCP's staunchest supporters, have begun protesting. In September 2025, dozens surrounded a police station in Shandong, demanding justice for unpaid training. Viral footage shows them in camouflage, blocking entrances, forcing the authorities to send 78 police vehicles. "I was wrong to join the party, wrong to give 15 years of my life to the army," cried one veteran from Jiangsu. Their grievances echo those of millions who were promised jobs and resettlement only to be abandoned. At the same time, toxic food scandals continue to shake public trust. From fake buffets padded with fillers, to spoiled seafood treated with anti-diarrhea drugs, to bleached chicken feet and chemically puffed pig trotters, the food supply is riddled with fraud. Additives cause addiction, produce is drenched in pesticides, and even imported brand restaurants are caught passing off cheap local goods as premium. Citizens lament. All our money ends up in hospitals because everything we eat is fake. Education, once seen as a ladder to success, has become another trap. Tuition fees climb, while schools burden families with endless fees for water cards, shower cards, even dormitory air conditioning. Parents sell homes to fund degrees, only to see their children return jobless. Job fairs are staged spectacles that enrich local photocopy shops rather than provide real opportunities. Middle-aged workers fare no better. Teachers earn 801,000 yuan a month, cashiers 701,400, and background actors just 100 yuan a day. Even office jobs, paying 2,800 yuan, attract long queues. Families struggle with debt, ride-hailing is oversaturated, and saving for the future is impossible. At the top, Xi Jinping faces an empty treasury. Revenues shrink while spending on military expansion, foreign aid, and stability maintenance grows. Transfers to local governments now exceed 10 trillion yuan, leaving the state dependent on debt. Former officials warn that the treasury resembles the Soviet Union before its collapse. Local governments squeeze citizens to survive, evoking memories of Mao's Great Leap Forward. All of this paints a grim portrait of China in 2025. Economic collapse, social unrest, and political fracture. Military deployments, veterans' protests, poisoned food, and youth despair are cracks in the facade the CCP struggles to maintain. But amid the darkness, there are signs of awakening. From Guangga's streets to Shandong's veterans to the lying flat generation, ordinary citizens are finding hope in truth and courage. Like Nepal's uprising, they may one day shatter the iron curtain of silence.
Xiaomi 17. From confrontation to blatant copying, a desperate ploy. Just hours after the iPhone 17 officially went on sale on the evening of September 12th, Xiaomi, China's tech giant, dropped its own bombshell, renaming its Xiaomi 16 series to Xiaomi 17, accompanied by a bold public challenge to take on Apple head-on. Lei Jun, Xiaomi's CEO, dubbed the Elon Musk of China, posted on Weibo. "We debated for 180 days, working tirelessly to make the leap past 16 and confront iPhone 17 directly. But behind the grandiose rhetoric lies a harsh reality. This isn't innovation, it's blatant copying. The naming scheme mirrors Apple's exactly from 17, 17 Pro to 17 Pro Max, along with a strikingly similar design featuring slim bezels and flat screens, even down to the slogan, leading 100 years ahead. The internet erupted. "Why not call it Xiaomi 117 and claim to be a century ahead of Apple?" one user quipped. A longtime Xiaomi fan lamented, "I supported Xiaomi out of patriotism, but now I'm embarrassed." Is this a confrontation or just piggybacking on Apple's hype? The controversy escalated as comparison videos spread online showing the Xiaomi 17 as a near-identical knockoff of the iPhone 17, complete with a camera setup and an ad-riddled laggy MIUI interface. Xiaomi's history of copying was dragged into the spotlight like a horror movie reel. Its flagship SU7 car, once hailed as a breakthrough, was criticized for resembling Porsche by 90% from the elongated front to intricate door locks, though Xiaomi's version, priced at just 300 yuan, lacks the LED lights and cigarette lighter of the original. One SU7 owner shared, "2 days after buying it, the logo fell off. The speakers crackled like firecrackers, and the crash bar deformed after a minor bump." Lei Jun once vowed not to copy a single detail, but Porsche scoffed at Xiaomi's design patents as a joke. The result, sluggish SU7 sales, forced Xiaomi to slash prices from 4,000 yuan to just over 2,000 yuan, while its stock plummeted. This signals a Xiaomi grappling with an economic crisis, razor-thin 5% profit margins, squeezing small factories, and even strong-arming African partners. The Chinese Communist Party CCP touts Xiaomi as a national brand, but beneath the surface lies fear without latching onto Apple's coattails. Xiaomi risks fading into obscurity. Huawei's price plunge, desperate discounts, or admission of defeat. While Xiaomi played the name-copying card, Huawei countered the iPhone 17 with a bloodbath price cut strategy. Just one day after Apple's launch, Huawei announced a Harmony OS gratitude campaign. All flagship models slashed by 2,000 yuan from the foldable Mate X6 down from 18,999 to 16,999 yuan to the Pura 80 Pro cut by 1,000 yuan. "We don't just outshine in technology. We're thousands of yuan cheaper than Apple," proclaimed Yu Chengdong, Huawei's head, on Weibo. But behind this trump card lies panic. Huawei's sales have plummeted 30% from last year, forcing a fire sale to clear bloated inventories. A small retailer in Shenzhen groaned, "I'm a reseller, and Huawei stock is piling up. I'm losing money because prices are dropping faster than a brakeless bicycle. Huawei, how are we supposed to survive?" The harsh truth hit harder as quality complaints flooded in. Videos surfaced of users reporting Mate X6 leaks after 5 to 6 days, trifold screens flickering below 20 degrees C, and devices exploding without impact. A mother who bought a 18,999 yuan phone for her father said, "It broke after a year and Huawei refused warranty, blaming user error and quoting 3,000, 4,000 yuan for repairs." Devices overheated from browsing Douyin auto-deleted background apps due to excessive heat, and Harmony OS was riddled with bugs. WeChat crashed constantly, and work apps wouldn't run. After-sales service. A disaster staff berated customers as mentally defective and forced them to sign agreements accepting Harmony OS inconveniences before purchase. The peak came in Harbin, where a retailer complaining about a bulging screen and loose adhesive was arrested by police at a Huawei service center. "They knew my business address and threatened to freeze my account," he said in a video swiftly deleted. Netizens dubbed this the IQ tax, a foolish price paid for buying Huawei out of patriotism. While Apple held steady prices, Huawei's discounts masked a grim reality: reliance on Qualcomm chips, no true domestic chip breakthrough, and global sales tanking due to U.S. sanctions. Consumer revolt. From patriotism to boycotting domestic brands. The storm didn't stop at sales, it sparked a rebellion among consumers, the true victims of this brand war.
On Douyin and Weibo, thousands of videos showed lines for the iPhone 17. 90% of college students use Apple. Androids are just cheap devices with yellowish screens, one user said. A young woman confessed, "I love my country, but for financial media work, iPhone's video quality is unmatched, no lag, no overheating." Meanwhile, Huawei and Xiaomi stores stood deserted. Apple's first floor is packed, while the domestic brand's second floor feels like a graveyard. Xiaomi fans felt betrayed. From the unique Ultra to copying Pro Max without Apple as a benchmark. They're directionless. One Xiaomi car owner smashed his device in front of a store. They claimed 200 km/h to a dead stop, but a light crash dislodged the logo and fried the speakers. Our money doesn't grow on trees. The outrage fueled a boycott movement. Stop Being Huawei's fodder trended with millions of views. Users accused Xiaomi of poaching Geely engineers for cars and copying Meizu since its early days. Huawei faced backlash for exploding batteries leaks and silencing customers. Economic woes worsened the situation. Youth unemployment soared. Disposable income shrank, yet the 13,999 yuan iPhone 17 1TB sold out. "We're secretly wealthy," a blogger noted, but the CCP hides it with propaganda. Buying domestic is patriotic. Buying Apple is treason. The result: consumers voted with their wallets lining up for Apple despite censorship. The patriotism trap, political pressure, and silent resistance. Beneath the national brand veneer, the CCP is intensifying its anti-US campaign. If you're Chinese, choose Xiaomi, otherwise you're a traitor. Yet iPhone 17 sold out, despite social media claims of Apple spying on users. One netizen mocked, "If there's proof, Apple's spying its $3 trillion market cap would crash to $500 billion, why not show it?" This fanaticism isn't just delusion, it's a control tool. Huawei fans scream patriotism as a shield for self-interest, but when benefits vanish, they switch sides. An Apple user argued, "I pay taxes. Apple creates jobs. Why am I labeled a traitor?" Silent resistance is rising. Young people see Lei Jun as a copycat icon, not an innovator. If Xiaomi succeeds by copying, why bother? Innovating, a student asked. Huawei, with its military roots, is accused of spying yet fails domestically. The anti-US campaign flopped despite boycott calls. Apple's mainland sales surged 50%. This is a political crisis. The CCP hides it with censorship, deleting objective analyses and locking critical accounts. The internet warps minds, a banned blogger lamented. Telling the truth gets you reported by loyal fans who's protecting them. Censorship and hidden truths. The CCP's crumbling facade. Beneath lies an iron curtain of censorship concealing systemic cracks. The Harbin Huawei complaint video vanished instantly, its poster's account locked for disrupting order. A Heilongjiang user said, "I posted about arrogant after-sales service, and my account was banned." Huawei knows my personal info from their system. On Weibo, posts about the iPhone frenzy were cleaned, replaced with claims of Harmony OS, surpassing 50% longer call time. But leaks slip through. Huawei forces buyers to sign system flaw acceptance agreements, and staff admit, "Don't update, it's not ready." Bigger secrets are surfacing. China's economy is stagnating with 4% GDP growth, a decade low, 20% youth unemployment, and crippling public debt. The CCP masks this with crazed marketing, boasting leading ahead while relying on US chips, copying Porsche and Ferrari tech.
Xiaomi's cars rival Tesla but crash due to shoddy quality. Huawei claims 3 generations ahead but battles exploding batteries. Society is polarized youth queue for Apple to flex while older generations are coerced into patriotism via propaganda. Politically, US-China tensions escalate with Huawei's sanctions-induced global market loss, forcing a domestic fight to the death. America's collapse. "We've heard it for 30 years, a netizen scoffed. But China's the one crumbling from world's factory to copycat workshop with innovation stifled by control. Broader consequences, a full-scale crisis, an uncertain future. The bigger picture is a China facing a comprehensive crisis. Economically, giants like Xiaomi and Huawei crush small factories with thin profits, leading to fire sales and widespread unemployment. Socially, consumers are exhausted by price wars and poor quality, with trust collapsing from leading ahead to fodder for the grinder. Politically, the CCP uses patriotism as a shield, but fails to control behavior wallets. Trump propaganda. Hidden truths. Crippling debt. Foreign tech dependence and simmering youth discontent, ready to smash Huawei phones in front of stores for justice. The iPhone 17 isn't just a phone, it's a torch exposing cracks. While Apple delivers on time, domestic brands overhype and vanish. Quality always wins, a Shenzhen buyer said. But for the CCP, victory is suppression, deleting videos, locking accounts, and preaching nationalism. Will this storm spark change, or is it the final crack before total collapse? China stands at a crossroads: innovate or copy, freedom or control, and consumers lining up for Apple have already chosen their answer. Firebombs on wheels. The electric vehicle revolution turns into a disaster. While the world dreams of a clean electric vehicle EV era, China, the global leader in EV production with millions of vehicles on the road each year, is facing a real nightmare. Every day, 7 to 8 EVs catch fire, turning bustling streets into fiery battlegrounds. This week in Sichuan, a charging station erupted into a towering inferno with black smoke engulfing the area, sending panicked drivers scrambling to save their metal heaps worth tens of thousands of yuan. The flames spread like a storm, consuming everything in seconds. The culprit, lithium-ion batteries, the green technology that companies like BYD once boasted, were absolutely safe. But the harsh reality is far different. Even a minor collision can trigger thermal runaway, releasing toxic gases and unstoppable flames that even professional firefighters struggle to extinguish. The crisis doesn't end there. Leaking batteries are turning EVs into mobile biological bombs. In Zhengzhou, Joe, an ordinary driver, nearly lost his life stepping into his car. A putrid stench like rotting eggs wafted from the air conditioning, but it was actually toxic hydrogen sulfide gas leaking from the battery. Within 30 seconds, Joe collapsed outside the car, gasping for air, while his younger brother vomited from the residual fumes. The manufacturer admitted batteries could emit odd odors above 300 degrees, but offered only half-hearted explanations, igniting a firestorm of outrage on social media. These aren't cars, they're biological weapons. One viral comment raged, echoing the terror of millions of EV owners. And this is just the tip of the iceberg from a July 7th fire in Guizhou, where an EV burned to ashes on a roadside to a blaze off the coast of Alaska that sank the Morning Midas ship, carrying 3,000 Chinese EVs. Experts from Bloomberg and Allianz point to lithium batteries as the greatest risk of the century. BYD, the giant behind the slogan, "Build Your Dreams," is now mocked as "Burn Your Dreams." On July 7th, in Haiku, a BYD song exploded during rush hour, the blast echoing like a Hollywood action flick, prompting netizens to exclaim, "How do you dare drive these? Is it courage or apathy?" 2 weeks later at Chengdu's Tianfu Airport, another BYD forgot its brakes, spinning 30-40 times like a roller coaster from hell before stopping. BYD dismissed viral videos as rumors and threatened to sue the internet, a desperate move to cover up failure. The climax came in Hefei on July 29th, where BYD staff were caught removing the brand's logo from a burning vehicle as if erasing evidence. They arrived so fast it proves the cars are monitored in real time. Netizens exposed, revealing BYD's BEU system, which tracks vehicles' location and speed 24/7, turning owners into prey. It's not just BYD. Chang'an Qiwan A07 exploded in Changsha. Dongfeng caught fire with children inside in Chengdu. An ideal mega self-ignited on a Hangzhou highway. These incidents expose a collapsing Chinese EV industry with maintenance costs 30% higher, real-world range dropping 31% in 38 degrees C heat, and resale values near zero. Blogger Yang, regretting his purchase after 2 years, sold his EV and warned, "Buying an EV today is stepping into a deadly trap." While the Chinese Communist Party CCP pushes EVs as a green symbol, summer's humid heat fuels fires and government cover-ups only amplify fears. Beijing's ghost city, economic collapse and a wave of unemployment. Amid dark clouds and fires, China's economy is melting like wax. Beijing, the empire's heart, is now a symbol of decline. Millions are fleeing the capital, and commercial hubs stand silent, like ghost towns at rush hour. In September 2025, Aeon Mall, Beijing, Fangtai, Japan's last major mall, shuttered after 29 years, leaving an empty shell. Videos from local bloggers on September 6th showed desolate entrances, locked coffee shops, and brands like Nitori and Green Party quietly withdrawing. Aeon, which expanded since 1996 with supermarkets and malls from Beijing to Guangdong, posted a cumulative $94 million loss by mid-2024, with revenue down 7% and a $44 million profit deficit. The economy hasn't recovered post-COVID, analysts note, citing sluggish income growth, job pressure, and collapsing consumer confidence. It's not just Aeon. Beijing's Parkson, after 31 years, will close by late 2025, paying a $1.6 million penalty to end its lease. Pizza Hut vanished. Xinyuan and Chuansha roads are lined with for rent signs, and Qingfeng Baozi shops are locked. From Beijing Grand Canal Place to Shimao Tianjie, Palace stores are shuttering, reflecting the middle class's shrinking purchasing power. CPI data for early 2025 shows food prices down 0.9% and energy costs plummeting, signs of brutal deflation, with merchants liquidating inventory through discounts and consumers hoarding savings. Consumption hasn't vanished. It's shifted. Mixu Ice City and Coco Coffee crowd train stations, while Gucci closes 6 stores, Prada 4, and Louis Vuitton 2, with luxury sales down 20% in 2024. Japanese brands are fleeing en masse. Muji, Ito Yokado, and Nippon Steel are scaling back, pivoting to Southeast Asia and India, the next China. Uniqlo has 70 stores in Indonesia, and Aeon sees Malaysia as a gold mine. Meanwhile, at least 882 stores closed in China in early 2025. Walmart, RT Mart, Yonghui. Migrant workers from Guangdong wander with suitcases, jobless, after months taking low-paid night shifts or facing rejection as male over 40. Farmers rise at 3 a.m. to sell vegetables, earning just 325 yuan per market, barely enough for porridge. State-owned enterprises, once a shield, now delay wages, offering meager subsidies, forcing workers into debt. Nepal's ousting of its Beijing-friendly regime in just 2 days prompts reflection. They reclaimed their future, What about us? A fractured society, lying flat in despair and instability. Economic collapse has spread to a shattered society. Chinese citizens are entering their harshest era, living in a state of lying flat, no work, no marriage, no children, steeped in fear and despair. Once bustling streets are desolate stores shuttered, and Luba, a prime location, is filled with jobless wanderers. Jobs are deemed humiliating, and earning enough for daily survival is a distant dream. In Wuhan and Hunan, markets are deserted during holidays, and restaurant chains set up street stalls with discounts to survive. If it hasn't collapsed, it's on the verge, one resident remarked. Unemployment's pressure pushes millions to the brink, unable to afford rent. Single men become social time bombs under strain. The post-90s and 00s generations retreat. I can't even feed myself. How could I marry delivery? And ride-hailing are the last safety net propping up society. If they collapse, a full-scale crisis erupts. Gold-digging women drowning in debt rush to marry for escape. One Fujian man lost 900,000 yuan in betrothal gifts, only for the bride to vanish with the cash. Mental strain is crushing from burning EVs to freakish clouds. Citizens are so accustomed to calamity, they jest darkly. BYD a high-tech coffin for a proper burial. The CCP's cover-up, dark secrets, and a looming political collapse. Behind it all is the CCP's hand-hiding secrets to maintain an illusion of prosperity. EV fires, rumors they threaten to sue the internet, frog migrations, thunderstorm asthma. Unrelated to disasters, they claim deleting videos and denying a new virus eerily like COVID 2.0. The economy official reports claim stability, while ghost malls and tens of millions unemployed tell the truth. Xi Jinping plays his final card with coffers drained. He pushes EVs and green initiatives to salvage the regime, but it only fuels anger. The core contradiction boasting GDP and skyscrapers, while citizens live hollowed out their discontent, a dam ready to burst once it breaks, the system collapses. Nepal's uprising reminds peace can shatter swiftly. China stands on the brink, the deeper the cover-up, the fiercer the backlash. Future or apocalypse. China today is a costly lesson from EV firebombs to freakish skies, from ghost cities to a society lying flat. It paints a portrait of total crisis. The CCP conceals, but the truth leaks like toxic gas from lithium batteries. Can Xi salvage it? Or is this the start of collapse? The people have lost hope, left only with a question: when will it be enough? Follow China. Undercover for the next hidden truths.
China trapped in tariff war. Exports and imports decline. Simultaneously, deflation deepens. As Chinese and U.S. officials were holding another round of trade negotiations in London, Beijing's latest economic data further fueled public concerns. The figures revealed continued weakness in domestic consumption, falling product prices, and an export-import performance far worse than expected. Against this gloomy backdrop, Chinese authorities rushed to announce new support measures, citing the need to address pressing hardships faced by the people, but the effectiveness of these steps remains in doubt. Exports to the U.S. plummet, imports also slide. June 9, China's General Administration of Customs released May trade data. Exports to the United States fell by 34.5%, the steepest drop since the pandemic. Although exports to ASEA and the EU recorded double-digit growth, overall exports in May rose by only 4.8% year-on-year in U.S. dollar terms, falling short of the 6% market forecast and slowing from April's 8.1% growth. At the same time, total imports fell by 3.4%, worse than anticipated. Meanwhile, the Consumer Price Index, CPI, fell for the fourth consecutive month, while the Producer Price Index, PPI, dropped 3.3% year-on-year, the sharpest decline in 22 months. Together, these figures signal a broad-based downturn stretching from production to consumption. Expert warning: the world is moving away from China's factory. Economist Sheng Xiaonong argued that the numbers had already been polished, yet the situation remained extremely serious. He noted that May's figures were based on orders placed before new tariffs were imposed. Given the steep drop, he predicted June's exports to the U.S. would look even worse. According to Chung, the prolonged back and forth in the tariff war is accelerating capital flight from China. China's role as the world's factory is fading. Foreign companies are pulling out orders and investment, and this is an irreversible process. Month by month, foreign capital is leaving, orders are shrinking, and the global supply chain is gradually phasing China out. He further stressed that declining imports serve as a leading indicator of weakening exports. When fewer raw materials and energy are brought in, it means factories are running below capacity, labor demand shrinks, and production as well as exports inevitably decline. Double deflation, CPI and PPI both fall. Economist C. Ling added that the simultaneous fall of CPI and PPI is an especially alarming signal. In the past, when only CPI was falling, companies could still scrape by with some production profits. Now, with PPI also down, corporate earnings are being eroded, triggering more layoffs, rising unemployment, and further deterioration in consumer demand. He explained, "Today's deflation is no longer just demand-driven, it has spread to the supply side. This kind of deflation is deeper, more dangerous, and likely to last much longer." New policies, real relief or mere gestures. In response to the crisis, several Chinese ministries announced easing measures, such as removing household registration (hukou) restrictions for social insurance enrollment and revising the minimum wage adjustment mechanism. These policies aim to reassure the public. Yet experts argue they are largely symbolic. Without a massive fiscal stimulus package to directly boost consumption and restore market confidence, these measures are unlikely to truly ease the daily struggles of hundreds of millions of ordinary citizens. Tightening belts becomes a nationwide reality. Pay cuts, layoffs, and deflation strike all at once. On May 26 in Beijing, a new Hutong-style shopping mall opened with lively fanfare, but the bustling facade could not conceal the growing anxiety across society. In recent days, news of pay cuts has surfaced again in cities such as Beijing and Zhejiang. From civil servants and state-owned enterprise staff to employees in the private sector, nearly every household has been forced to tighten their belts. Falling incomes have quickly eroded consumer confidence, and many experts warn that a deeper economic and social crisis is beginning to emerge. Shrinking incomes, heavier burdens. Since early 2025, financial pressure has weighed heavily on families. Mr. Li, a grassroots worker at a central state-owned enterprise in Beijing, told reporters on June 16, "I used to earn 6,000 yuan a month, now it's down to 5,000 and some allowances are gone. My wife works in a private company. Some of her colleagues have had their pay reduced, others have been told they'll be let go by the end of July." Mr. Ma, employed at another state-owned company in Beijing, confirmed that since 2023, his firm had already undergone 2 rounds of layoffs and pay reductions. Base salaries have shrunk, lunch and transport allowances were cancelled. This year, cuts range from 5% to 20% depending on position. Work that used to be done by 2 or 3 people is now pushed onto 1 person, leaving everyone overwhelmed. Many workers have been forced to seek side jobs. Mr. Wu admitted, "Now I can only look for outside gigs, but it's not easy. I have to rely on friends to introduce some outsourced design projects." From finance giants to civil servants, no one is spared. Public records show that since early 2025, major groups such as China International Capital Corporation and the China Development Bank have tightened wages. Reports indicate that 27 central financial enterprises are implementing salary caps, setting a maximum of 1 million yuan per year and slashing pay for middle and upper-level managers, a staff member at CICC revealed. Almost the entire building has taken pay cuts. Even junior employees lost 5%, while those earning higher wages were cut much more. In the civil service system, what was once considered symbolic pay cuts has now become substantial reductions. Mr. Zheng from Zhejiang said, "A friend of mine is a civil servant. This year, ordinary staff lost 50,000, 60,000 yuan annually. Department heads lost 80,000, 100,000. And higher-level officials up to 150,000. They already cut salaries once before, and now it's happening again." The situation has spread nationwide. A resident of Qingdao, Shandong, reported that a relative working as a township cadre now receives only 70% of his salary, and payments are often delayed. In Guangdong, legal professionals note that police salaries have dropped sharply from 300,000 yuan a year to just 200,000. In Dongguan, a mid-level state bank employee said, "Our salaries have fallen 30% in 2 years, and nearly all performance bonuses have been eliminated." On social media, some posts reveal that many counties have been unable to sell land, real estate projects remain stalled, and debts keep piling up. Expenses for official duties have gone unpaid for months, leaving many civil servants to cover work costs out of pocket. Consumption chills, deflation spreads. The direct outcome is a sharp decline in consumer spending power, Mr. Meng, a Shandong resident, explained. Small businesses slash prices to survive. Good pork ribs are only 12 yuan a jin, while hog prices have collapsed. Restaurants are slashing prices desperately. This isn't competition anymore, it's dragging each other down. In Beijing's Haidian district, Ms. Su voiced concern. "Small supermarkets are cutting prices frantically. I'm afraid in a few months they'll all shut down." She observed changes in everyday consumption, from switching brands to cutting back on dining and entertainment. "Now my family eats out only once a week. Before it was 2 or 3 times. Official data continues to tout stability in the first quarter of 2025, but local budget numbers tell a different story. In Zhejiang, public revenue rose just 0.2% year-on-year, while tax revenue fell 0.3%. Most of the increase came from fines and other irregular sources. A tightening chain from top to bottom. Economist Wu Qingxie explained. State-owned firms slash wages, private businesses close, small merchants battle each other on price. This is the result of exhausted local finances. The government has no money to care for people, and citizens no longer want to spend. A tightening chain is forming from top to bottom. Wu warned that pay cuts for civil servants are only the beginning. The deeper problem is that people have lost the motivation to consume. Companies have lost the confidence to invest, and society as a whole is shrinking its imagination for the future. In interviews, the recurring keywords are involution, deflation, pay cuts, and cautious spending. Wu cautioned, if living frugally were only a slogan, it might be tolerable, but if it becomes the norm, if it turns into having no life at all, then the resilience and confidence of society will truly be pushed to its limits. National Bureau of Statistics reports growth but party and state push for austerity. Is China's economy improving or worsening? China's National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, has released its latest economic data, continuing to emphasize that major indicators are on the rise and the economy is improving. Yet the actions of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and the State Council tell a different story. Recently issued directives require all party and government agencies to take the lead in practicing austerity. So, is China's economy really on the upswing, or is it deteriorating? Interpretations vary across society. On Monday, May 19, the NBS announced April's figures, describing steady and relatively rapid growth, highlighting an ongoing positive trend for China's national economy. However, the front page of the People's Daily that same day was dominated not by praise for growth, but by articles stressing the need for thrift, curbing waste, and practicing austerity within party and government institutions. The People's Daily editorial argued that the CCP Central Committee and State Council's newly revised regulations on strict economy and opposition to waste in party and government organs constitute an upgraded bulwark against extravagance. The regulations tighten the rules for government austerity, aiming to ensure limited fiscal funds are spent where most needed. The new version imposes stricter rules on official travel, receptions, and conferences, forbidding overseas study tours, banning mutual banquets funded by public money, and canceling forums, exhibitions, or sporting events unless absolutely necessary. Responsibility for preventing extravagance is emphasized, with serious consequences for those who indulge or permit wasteful practices. Analysis. Austerity directives always appear in times of economic trouble. Independent political scholar Chen Dayin told our station that similar policies emerged when Xi Jinping first took office, as part of his 8 great regulations to project a new image and establish early achievements. But, Chen noted, if one reviews CCP history, such directives typically appear during times of economic difficulty. Chen explained, since 1949, the CCP has issued similar documents many times. The timing tells the story. In 1958, during the Great Leap Forward and the so-called 3 years of natural disasters, the national economy began to collapse. In 1980, the economy had just recovered from the brink of collapse. In 1997, during the Asian financial crisis, sweeping fiscal retrenchment occurred. Every time the release of these austerity directives coincided with severe economic strain and tight state finances. It means the coffers are empty, the landlord's pantry is bare. Extravagance within party and government agencies was undermining fiscal operations. To avoid collapse, they had to call for tightening belts. Chen added that the recent China-Latin America Forum in Beijing, where Beijing pledged $66 billion, 0 cents in credit lines, shows that austerity measures target only local governments and grassroots officials, not the central level. Local governments already tightening belts. Contract teachers cut, compensation withheld. In reality, local governments had already begun cutting costs before the central government's call. Reports from Henan, Shandong, and Guangdong showed delayed or reduced salaries and allowances for teachers and civil servants. Zhengzhou retiree and former teacher Jia Lingmin told our station that grassroots school staff and contract teachers have borne the brunt. School office workers are like minor civil servants. They used to rely on bonuses higher than their base pay, but now they only get the base salary. Performance bonuses are gone. In more remote schools, many contract teachers were recruited. These teachers weren't on permanent staff but were given pensions and paid normally. Now I know of such teachers who have been dismissed outright. Mr. Wei, a lawyer representing demolition cases, revealed that local governments under fiscal strain are even withholding compensation for displaced residents. Governments are diverting funds. Compensation awarded by courts is taken to cover administrative expenses. In urban village redevelopments or large-scale rural demolitions, compensation funds are funneled into government-controlled accounts. Too often, the money never reaches residents because the government embezzles it. Next step in austerity: downsizing the bureaucracy. Economist Cheng Xiaonong, former head of the Comprehensive Research Office of China's Economic System Reform Institute, said local governments have already adopted extreme penny-pinching measures, like cutting bottled water and enforcing double-sided printing. This shows that administrative spending can hardly be cut further. A new central order for austerity, he argued, signals impending layoffs. Cheng explained, austerity is just another way of saying the state lacks financial strength. Local governments have already squeezed out everything they can. The only thing left to cut is personnel. This document is a warning, a coded signal to prepare for staff reductions. But cuts must be subtle, not too visible, so as not to damage the CCP's image. For example, workers at retirement age won't be rehired. Hiring fewer new staff at lower pay allows high-paid older employees to retire early, shifting the cost of salaries from local budgets to the Social Security Fund. Chung added that while China issued special bonds and allowed debt swaps last year to ease local fiscal pressure, the property crisis remains unresolved. Weak domestic demand, compounded by tariff war impacts, means that local governments in central and western regions are likely to collapse financially first, forcing layoffs to cut spending.